Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiriye nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttam shloke bhaktir bhakti nashtike. So continuing with the discussion on Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Goswami, volume 6, chapter 52nd, I have done my part. Prabhupada is in Vrindavan, July 1977, and speaking with devotees and just thinking of all the wonderful events in the life while preaching and traveling in America and other places. Prabhupada recalled the first San Francisco temple, the first Los Angeles temple, going to Seattle, pushing Goshundar to go to Hawaii, receiving a letter from Govinda Dasi in Hawaii who said that it was mango season, except that when Prabhupada went there, it was rat season and all night the rats were running in the rafters. So Hawaii is tropical country, tropical weather over there, Hawaii Island, and plenty of fruits, especially mangoes. I've never been there, but I've heard it's wonderful season over there. For Prabhupada, said it was rat season, so many rats in the attic, they were running around. This is a new life, this Krishna consciousness, said Srila Prabhupada. There is no doubt about it. His thoughts returned to his upcoming tour, and he said he could sleep in 3 seats across in the airplane. But he cautioned the devotees to be careful that once he got to America, he not get kidnapped. Previously, he had considered that Krishna may have been detaining him from going to the West so that he would not be disturbed by the demons. But now he would go in any case. So he had made up his mind that he would go. Prabhupada was ready to leave, but the delays and anxieties persisted. Balwanta returned from Calcutta, but Srila Prabhupada was not pleased to see him. Why, he demanded, had he come back without Abhiram? Balwanta said that he had wanted to be with Srila Prabhupada and he thought that Abhiram could handle the last steps of getting the green card. Prabhupada reprimanded Balwanta, saying service to the Guru was better than being with him. Service to the Guru was better than being with him. Very important instruction. But obviously, we wanted to be with Prabhupada to get more motivation, but service is still important. Then Tamal Krishna left for Delhi to arrange for the tickets. When 2 days later, Srila Prabhupada learned that there might be a delay of several days before Tamal Krishna and the other Americans in the party could leave India, he said he could leave immediately without them, taking Shrutkirti as his servant. So, might be some visa issues or ticket issues or something. So then Prabhupada heard of an airport strike in London, and the night before his scheduled departure, his health worsened. Many devotees urged him not to go. But amazingly, the tickets and passport arrived, and at midnight on August 28th, after a 6 month stay in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada and his party left from the front gate of the Krishna Balram Mandir and headed for Delhi in a caravan of cars. So many devotees were going with them. Just as Prabhupada was leaving, Bishan Chandra Seth, a friend of Prabhupada's in Vrindavan, had come and protested. It will not be good if something happens and you leave your body outside of Vrindavan. Prabhupada told Mr. Seth that because his disciples were so much in love with him, he could not easily refuse their request. If the trip became too difficult, he said he would return immediately. He told Mr. Seth that he was simply depending on Krishna. So, even Prabhupada was moved by the love of his disciples. Still, there was risk. There was a risk. Prabhupada rode lying on a mattress in the back seat of his car, and after 2 hours of driving over roads greatly damaged by flooding, they reached Delhi airport. Srila Prabhupada waited in the car. The early morning was warm, and the devotees opened the car doors. Bhavanand Goswami, who had just been released from jail in Bengal, had arrived in time to see Srila Prabhupada. Bhavanand approached the car and placed his head on Prabhupada's feet. How are you? Prabhupada asked. Bhavanand reported that everything was improving in Mayapur. All the local sadhus and citizens were now siding with ISKCON against the hoodlums who had attacked the temple. Srila Prabhupada was moved to an airport waiting room prior to going through the customs formalities. About 10 devotees were there to see him off as he left with a party of four: Tamal Krishna, Upendra, Pradyumna, and Pradyumna's wife Arundhati. Srila Prabhupada sat upright on the airport couch, silently fingering the beads in his bead bag. His bare feet, resting in his sandals, were slightly swollen, as were his hands. He looked to see who was present and slightly nodded to each disciple in recognition. The devotees felt there was no need for Srila Prabhupada to talk. Just being with him was wonderful and fully satisfying. He had already spoken to them fully and had given himself in his books in many other ways. So they chanted and looked lovingly at him up until the last moment when he went by wheelchair onto the plane. So even in that situation, his health wasn't good at all. He still traveled. First, went to London, but I think from London only he came back. His health was not good. So thus ends chapter 52nd. We can start chapter 53rd. Krishna's great soldier. During the long flight, Srila Prabhupada remained solemn. His servants were helpless to elevate the difficult situation as they might have in Vrindavan. And cigarette smoke, loud talk, and drunken laughter surrounded them. Cigarette smoke. So I guess that time smoking was permitted in the planes. Tamal Krishna, despite his concern, did not know what to do for Srila Prabhupada or what to ask him. Srila Prabhupada had often expressed a dislike for conversations with questions like, "How are you feeling?" So, yes, I mean, what to answer in that case? Because one can see how is he doing. Proper servants knew that they could not fully understand their spiritual master's thinking, and the scriptures also warned that one should not attempt to understand the mind of the Vaishnava. But they knew their service was to relieve him by arranging for quiet, by assisting him in bathing and dressing, or by taking him to the temple for darshan of Krishna Balram. Now, however, they were helpless to perform any of these tasks. Now, more than ever, Srila Prabhupada was in Krishna's hands. Earlier that year in Bhubaneswar, he had said that his disciples, although willing to help, could not change the situation if he was inconvenienced by old age. So they could just help, but they could not change the situation. And he had even given the example that although he might be in his opulent quarters at the Bhaktivedanta manor, that did not mean he would not suffer inconvenience. But Tamal Krishna, being very sensitive to Prabhupada's desires and experience in serving him, several times moved over and spoke with his spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada, he said, when you get to London, the devotees will be pleased to be with you. Yes, Srila Prabhupada replied. It's good that we are going. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada was mostly silent, meditating on Krishna and his mission of bringing love of Krishna to the world. The flight turned out to be an unusually exhaustive ordeal. When the plane landed in Rome, it was delayed there for 4 hours, and Srila Prabhupada had to wait in the airport lounge. When finally they arrived over London, the captain announced that they could not land yet due to strike, and so they continued circling for hours. Wow. Finally, 20 hours after leaving Delhi, the plane landed at Heathrow Airport. 20 hours. Now it takes only 8 hours at the most. Customs and immigrations officials and the British Airways ground crew allowed Srila Prabhupada in a wheelchair to quickly pass through all the formalities. And soon he was amid a throng of enthusiastic disciples and sitting in a white Rolls Royce en route to Bhaktivedanta Manor. The devotees had arranged a Rolls Royce for him. Yes, they should. The London airport and the busy highways leading into the city are certainly a great contrast to the peace and spirituality of Vrindavan. But for Srila Prabhupada, to suddenly leave the climate and transcendental culture of India to fly to the West was not usual, was not unusual. So he had done that so many times. He had been doing that, going from east to west, from north to south, from one nation to another, to the snowlands, to the tropics, to the cities, to the jungles, mixing with white people, black people, and Orientals at an almost constant pace for years. He was no Hindu village guru, suddenly astounded to see hundreds of automobiles racing on the highway, or to see factory smoke or skyscrapers, or the blind rat race of meat eaters. There was no question of culture shock for Srila Prabhupada. Yes, if somebody goes from first time from Vrindavan to London, he will be shocked. But not for Prabhupada. He had done that so many times. He had lived in all these cities, big cities, met so many people, preached to them, and he still wanted to give more. But there was a shock for his disciples in London who had never imagined that he would be so thin or that anyone could travel in such condition. For the devotees who had been at the airport to meet him, it had been a heart-rending experience. Even those who had heard the reports of Prabhupada in Vrindavan were not emotionally prepared for such a change. Prabhupada was as transcendental as ever, even more than ever, but the devotees were shocked at first to see him so different. Now he appeared like a powerful sage who had been undergoing long austerities for the benefit of humankind and who had become transcendental to his body, although living within it. Yes, Prabhupada was really, really thin. He hadn't eaten anything, or he was just hardly taking anything. So all the body fat was gone. And, and of course, it was a shock for the devotees in London who'd been reading about, but hadn't had a chance to see Prabhupada. And then seeing Prabhupada like this. At Bhaktivedanta Manor, Srila Prabhupada went from the car to a palanquin and entered the temple room, where about 300 disciples and well-wishers were waiting to be with him. Devotees from all the ISKCON centers in northern and southern Europe had rushed to England on a last-minute notice. They were holding kirtan for Srila Prabhupada as he entered, and they too, like the devotees at the airport, were deeply shocked. And for a moment, when they saw Srila Prabhupada wearing his dark sunglasses and appearing so thin, the kirtan almost stopped. Yet they simultaneously remained joyful and ecstatic, realizing that despite such difficulty, he had actually come to the West to be with them and encourage their Krishna consciousness. They had been praying for him for months. The prayer, "My dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please cure Srila Prabhupada," had been printed on a banner and hung over Prabhupada's Vyasasana. So we can only imagine this scene, seeing Prabhupada like this and praying for him. And although they were appreciative that Prabhupada had come to encourage them in their bhakti, but still it's so difficult to see the Guru like this, very thin and not well at all. The devotees of England, wanting to reciprocate with Srila Prabhupada with more than just the sentiment of the words, were also leading the world in transcendental book distribution. When a few weeks ago they had heard that Srila Prabhupada might be coming to England, it hadn't seemed possible considering his physical condition. They had heard he might leave his body at any moment, but then later they had heard he was better and he was coming to London. Even when they had heard he was definitely coming, they had been incredulous. But now it had come true. The DT room curtains were open and Srila Prabhupada beheld Radha Gokulananda. Some devotees stood in front of him, and with a small gesture, characteristic of his hand, he waved them aside. Without any change of expression, he sat with concentrated attention, facing the gorgeously dressed deities of Radha Gokulananda, whom he had named 4 years ago when calling for them to come and be worshipped here by the devotees of England. At Bhaktivedanta Manor, we had Radha Gokulananda, and at Soho Street Temple is Radha Landaneshwara. Without saying a word, Prabhupada went up to his room, where as many devotees as possible joined him. He had always said he felt comfortably at home in these quarters, and once again he was pleased to see outside his window the large lawn, the lake, and the ducks. The devotees sat before him with their palms folded, aware that this was no casual meeting. They had already offered their lives completely to Srila Prabhupada, and there was nothing more they could offer in words that would equal their dedication. So everybody wanted to join him in his quarters. A devotee placed a large silver plate full of prasadam on the table before Srila Prabhupada. He picked up a milk sweet and tasted it, then a piece of mango. Then 100 devotees who squeezed into the room and looked in from the doorway watched his every movement with fixed attention. There was complete silence. Then Srila Prabhupada looked up, smiling. So he said, "Is everyone all right?" Jai Srila Prabhupada was a warm reply. The tension of seeing Srila Prabhupada's different appearance suddenly melted, and everyone simply wanted to make him feel comfortable and to please him with their service. For the rest of the day, Srila Prabhupada remained alone, resting. Tamal Krishna lectured to the devotees in the temple room, explaining how Srila Prabhupada had decided it was better to travel, even at such a great risk, than to be invalid. Tamal Krishna told how someone had suggested Srila Prabhupada go to Tehran or Italy or France because of the airport strike in London, but how he had said, "I want to go to London. Srila Prabhupada has come to take shelter of you," said Tamal Krishna. He said that according to Shastra, a devotee should stay in Vrindavan, especially at the end of his life. But because Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master had ordered him to go to the West and preach, he had returned, determined to fulfill that mission until the last. So even that situation, health-wise, he still decided to come to the West. The devotees were deeply touched that Srila Prabhupada's coming was at least partially in recognition of their preaching. They resolved to reciprocate with him while he was there by holding a book distribution marathon. If they showed him their dedication by preaching, maybe he would stay a long time. At 2 o'clock the next morning, Bhagwan and Tamal Krishna went into Srila Prabhupada's quarters to attend him. Srila Prabhupada, who had just awakened, was very pleased to see Bhagwan, his leader from southern Europe. This was why he had come to the West, to be with his preachers and to be encouraged by them. Tamal has brought me with great difficulty, said Srila Prabhupada. It was the correct thing, I thought. What's the use of dying? Better to come. So Krishna Balram has placed me in the care of Radha Gokulananda. Bhagwan presented Srila Prabhupada with some newly printed books, an Italian Bhagavad Gita as it is, another volume of Srimad Bhagavatam in French, and other books in Dutch. The total book distribution in Europe, Bhagwan reported, had surpassed that of America. So much of book distribution in different languages was going on. Tamal, did you hear that? Prabhupada asked. This is my life. Come here, said Srila Prabhupada, began rubbing Bhagwan's head, and tears fell from his eyes. You have no problems, he said to Bhagwan. In his own work on Srila Prabhupada's behalf, Bhagwan had been encountering a rough period. But when Srila Prabhupada said, you have no problems, he took it that if he persevered, everything would be all right. As long as he stayed engaged in devotional service, he had no problems. For Bhagwan, there was no need for Prabhupada to say more. Prabhupada's order was already his heart and soul. But now that order and Srila Prabhupada's love entered deeper into his heart. Srila Prabhupada's mood was one of pure thankfulness, without his usual critical instructions. He simply wanted to be with his devotees and encourage them. So that's why he had come to London. Produce books, said Srila Prabhupada. These books are all the mercy of my Guru Maharaj. No author throughout the world has written so many books. Shakespeare, Milton, Dickens, neither their books have been so widely read or with such appreciation. When Prabhupada came down to the temple in the morning, all the devotees were able to be with him. Devotees here are all Vaikuntha men, said Srila Prabhupada. Good looking and nice dressing. Gokulananda is so beautiful. I shall be glad to die in that condition amongst the devotees and seeing Gokulananda. The devotees had come to see that Srila Prabhupada actually looked very wonderful in his dark sunglasses and freshly pressed silk dhoti and kurta, with clean, clear Vaishnav tilak on his forehead. He would come gliding down the stairs on the palanquin, carefully carried by two able-bodied disciples, and he would sit on the Vyasasana and watch them perform kirtan of the holy name. Since he rarely spoke, the kirtan and his appreciation of it was the main exchange between him and his disciples. Externally, Srila Prabhupada gave very little indication of even appreciating the kirtan. Those who were standing or dancing near to him, however, could see behind his glasses the tears sprinkling from the corners of his eyes and onto his cheeks. And all the devotees chanted and danced, rejoiced in the knowledge that Srila Prabhupada simply wanted to be with them. They knew that although he was a pure devotee and self-satisfied, he could actually be inspired by his disciples' affection. By the intense enthusiasm to serve and praise Krishna under his order, he could become enlivened to stay in the world longer and preach. So this was their heartfelt desire, the Prabhupada to stay longer and preach. The devotees in the manner agreed that Radha Gokulananda seemed to be looking especially at Srila Prabhupada, and he was looking especially at them. Some felt that by witnessing Srila Prabhupada and Radha Gokulananda, they were looking directly upon the spiritual world, seeing Krishna and his pure devotee. Therefore, there was no need for talks or demonstration further than what Srila Prabhupada was giving everyone by coming to be with them in the temple room. So at least there in Vrindavan also later he started, but earlier he wasn't even going for darshanarthi. But at least in manner, he could come down in palanquin, but take darshan of Radha Gokulananda. Okay, I guess we can stop here. If anybody has any questions or comments. Hare Krishna, Jai Srila
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.